Three bone-chilling true wilderness horror stories that haunt you forever. It was a dark, moonless night in the middle of nowhere, where the woods whispered secrets through rustling leaves and foreboding shadows danced beneath the tall trees. The air was thick with an unsettling energy, a sensation that something beyond the grasp of reason could be lurking just out of sight. Amidst that raw wilderness, three harrowing stories began to unfold, stories that would grip the hearts of those brave enough to listen. The first tale came from a seasoned hiker named Tom, who claimed he heard unnatural sounds echoing through the thickets. He'd been trekking alone when the shrieks began, chilling and inhuman, rolling across the plains like a warning scream from hell itself. Each echo rattled his bones, igniting primal fear that made his chest tighten. Was it an animal? A prank? Or something far worse? He shook the thought off, but the dread stuck like glue. Later, he stumbled across a circle of scorched earth, as if something had been burned alive right there. The sight sent his heart racing, forcing him to abandon his hike and return home. But he couldn't shake the feeling that the wilderness had claimed something or someone who would never be found again. Then there was Jordan, a camper who swore he saw strange flickering lights dancing between the trees at night. He thought it was just a trick of the shadows, but one night, he ventured closer, and that's when he met the eyes. A pair of glowing orbs, piercing through the dark, filled with an intelligence that sent a shiver down his spine. They didn't blink. They didn't move. They just watched. Horrified, he realized he was not alone. The creeping feeling of eyes upon him never left. In the morning, his friends found him pale and trembling, unable to explain what he'd experienced. Fear wormed through his mind, leaving a lingering question what had been waiting for him out there. Finally, there was Mila, a girl who explored the woods to gather herbs but stumbled across a warning sign. Do not enter. The temptation sang sweetly to her adventurous soul, and against her better judgment, she stepped inside. It was eerily quiet. Not even the wind dared to disturb the heavy air. As she walked deeper, the path twisted unnaturally before her like a living being, and she sensed a presence trailing just behind her. The chilling sensation slithered along her spine, urging her to flee, yet her feet felt rooted to the ground. Suddenly, she turned, only to face nothing but shadows and silence. Her heart raced. Had she narrowly escaped whatever had watched her so closely? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. But the stories don't end there. The darkness of the wilderness still holds more than just echoes and glimmers. There lies a place where the lost souls roam, and their whispers call to those who dare to listen. What secrets do the trees keep? What evil waits just outside the reach of firelight? As the wind shook the branches, a mournful howling began to rise above the foliage. Beckoning one more tale, would you dare to go deeper? Deep in the heart of the wilderness, as the wind whistled ominously through the branches, a new story lingered in the air, almost begging to be told. This tale belonged to Sarah, a college student who spent her summer interning at a remote research station deep in the forest. The allure of the wild had always called to her, but she never expected to uncover the horrors hidden in its depths. One evening, as dusk fell like a thick, choking fog, Sarah gathered with her fellow interns around a flickering campfire. They shared ghost stories that had their roots deep in the very woods that surrounded them. Laughter echoed through the trees, but Sarah felt it, a subtle prickle at the nape of her neck, as if being watched by unseen eyes. She pushed the feeling away, focusing instead on their tales, but then she heard a soft, haunting melody drifting on the wind, unlike anything she had ever encountered. It twisted through the branches, beckoning her closer, luring her away from the safety of the firelight. Compelled by an inexplicable pull, Sarah ventured into the darkening woods. Each step felt deliberate, as if the forest itself coaxed her deeper into its shadowed embrace. As she walked, the melody grew stronger, more intense. It wound around her like silk before suddenly stopping. Silence fell, thick and oppressive. Had she imagined it? Doubt gnawed at her, yet she pressed on, her heart racing in tandem with the underlying sense of dread. Soon, she stumbled upon a clearing. A ghostly stillness hung heavy in the air. Moonlight bathed the area, illuminating something both beautiful and terrifying, a circle of flowers, vibrant yet twisted unnaturally, forming an eerie halo. As she knelt to peer closer, a low, guttural growl echoed from the shadows, sending chills racing through her body. Her instincts screamed at her to flee, but something remarkable captured her attention, a shape moving in the darkness. It wasn't large but seemed to pulse and shift, almost as if it was alive. The growling intensified, vibrating through her core as she stood frozen. Gripped by shock, she barely registered her surroundings. Then, without warning, the creature emerged, a glimpse of twisted fur and sharp, glistening teeth. Its eyes, similar to Jordan's encounter, glowed with an unnatural light, filled with an intelligence that suggested it was aware of her presence. Panic clawed at Sarah. She turned and bolted, the surroundings blurring as she ran. The bushes snagged at her clothes, branches clawing at her skin, but she didn't stop. She could feel it behind her, growing closer with every frantic stride. Her lungs burned with exertion, and doubt started to creep in. Would she ever make it back? Finally, she burst back into the circle of firelight, collapsing at her friends' feet. They stared at her in shock, confused by her panic. What happened? One of them shouted over the crackling flames. She gasped for breath. The night filled with an ominous silence. The forest seemed to hold its breath, and just for a moment, their laughter fell away, replaced by the knowledge that something had changed. The dark woods still whispered, still beckoned, but now carried a sense of malevolence that everyone could feel. But that night wasn't the end. Something had awakened in the woods, something they couldn't quite understand. The next day, Sarah would learn that the woods had a history of drawing in unsuspecting souls, and not everyone returned. As the sun dipped below the horizon, she understood she might not be safe after all. What lurked among the trees? What other stories lay hidden? The answers almost seemed to echo back in the rustle of the leaves, urging her to uncover more. Would she dare? The next morning came with the daylight breaking through the thick canopy, illuminating the forest with eerie beams that felt as if they were spotlighting the dark secrets hidden beneath the leaves. Sarah couldn't shake the terror from the night before, the raw fear still clawing at her gut. She shared a quick glance with her friends, who were gathered for breakfast, their faces pinched with concern. Did they sense it too? The unsettling change in the air? Over a thin slice of toast, Sarah recounted her experience without embellishing the details. Her voice trembled, revealing the very real fear that still suffocated her. I saw something. A creature it was like nothing I've ever seen. Jordan, whose earlier encounter had seemed far-fetched at best, furrowed his brows, intrigued. You really think it's the same thing I saw? He leaned forward, eyes glistening with a mix of excitement and dread. It has to be, Sarah said, the growl of the eyes. It knows we're here. Maya, ever the skeptic, rolled her eyes. Come on, you guys. We're letting our imaginations run wild. We've all heard those ghost stories too many times. She tossed her hair back, trying to dismiss the tension around the table, but not everyone was convinced. Derek, who had been silent, finally spoke up, his voice low. Whether it's real or not isn't the issue. We don't know what's out there or how it may respond to us. His words hung in the air, heavy with implications. As the group fell quiet, every crunch of leaves outside seemed amplified, threatening. They had come to study the wildlife, sure, but now it felt as if they were trespassing in a territory that resented their presence. After breakfast, Sarah gathered her courage and approached the research station to look for answers. Inside, the faded parchment of old files whispered stories from the past. She flipped through pages of reports, each one riddled with sightings of strange creatures and vanishings tied to the forest. Each missing person was a reminder that the wilderness was not merely alive. It was a predator hiding behind the beautiful facade of nature. Hours passed, and as the afternoon wore on, unease coiled around her. The others eventually joined her, frustration and curiosity visible on their faces. They began piecing together the stories, each nugget of recollection feeding the dreadful narrative of a cursed place. But why aren't these stories more well-known? Sarah questioned. She was desperate to grasp the truth before it slipped away like sand through her fingers. Jordan shrugged, scanning one particularly disturbing account. Maybe it's easier for people to forget, he muttered, letting the weight of the words linger. After a long delay, a feeling of dread settled amongst them like a thick fog. Sarah raised her eyes, finally understanding the undeniable link between their horrifying stories. It wasn't just the creature, but the very land itself. They needed to confront whatever was hunting in the shadows or risk becoming a part of the lore themselves. Suddenly, a loud thud echoed from outside the station, startling them all. A collective gasp filled the room as they exchanged fearful looks. What was that? Maya whispered, her bravado evaporating. I don't know, but we should check it out, Derek replied, trepidation creeping into his voice. The very ground beneath them felt as though it trembled, a pulse of impending danger on the air. With their hearts pounding, they opened the door, an invitation or maybe a dare into the unknown. How deep did the darkness go? What had they awakened? Just beyond the threshold, a figure darted through the trees, leaving only a swath of silence in its wake. Did you see that? Sarah breathed, almost pleading for reassurance. But it was too late. The forest had seized them in its grasp, and there was no turning back now. What had they truly unleashed? What other secrets lay in wait, ready to devour the unwary? The chill of the air plunged deeper as they stepped outside, hearts racing and breaths visible in the cool morning. The forest loomed tall and dense around them, trees standing like ancient sentinels, their gnarled branches stretching out like skeletal hands. Each flutter of leaves sounded ominous, and the stillness that followed the figure's departure was more unnerving than any howl or growl. Maybe it was just an animal, Maya suggested, her voice shaking as she attempted to cling to rationality. But Sarah knew better. This wasn't just an animal. There was something supernatural watching them, something that thrived on their fear. Do you really think we should follow? Jordan asked, hesitant, glancing back at the research station. What if it's dangerous? We can't just stand here, Sarah replied, her voice steadier than she felt. We came for answers, and that thing felt like a warning. We need to confront whatever is out there. The group stood, uncertainty cascading among them like waves, but the flicker of terror ignited a spark of resolve. Slowly, they began to deliberate their next steps. Each voice, cautious yet fueled by curiosity, weighed the risk against the possibility of uncovering the truth. Fine, Derek finally acquiesced, a glint of stubborn defiance marking his face. But we stick together, no splitting up. We do this as a team. Quiet agreements rattled among them, and they ventured deeper into the forest, following a path marked by a faint trail of broken branches and disturbed foliage. An energy pulsed in the air, thickening with every step. It was as if the forest itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to unfold. How far can it go? Maya whispered, straining her eyes to catch any movement in the underbrush. It has to lead somewhere, right? Just keep moving, Sarah urged, now sensing an urgency beyond their fear. Every noise felt amplified, and every rustle made the hairs on the back of her neck stand on end. They paused for a moment as an eerie howl echoed from a distance, haunting them. What was that? Jordan asked, his voice barely above the sound of his heartbeat. Just keep walking, Sarah insisted, her voice a mix of dread and determination. The last thing they needed was to succumb to panic. Their surroundings morphed from familiar trails to an otherworldly maze. The trees began to close in, leaning towards one another as if they were inscribing secrets within their bark. Shadows danced ominously, and Sarah suddenly felt an unwelcoming chill crawl up her spine. Then, they found it a clearing, marked by a circle of jagged stones, half buried and weathered by time. In the center lay what remained of a fire pit, dark and full of decayed ash. Memories of the past clung to the air, whispering ancient tales through the branches above. As she gazed around, her heart sank at the sight of what appeared to be remnants of torn clothing, frayed and faded. This isn't right, she uttered, dread washing over her. Suddenly, the sound of snapping twigs drew everyone's attention, simultaneously straining their ears for the direction. Something stirred among the trees. Run, Derek shouted, his voice slicing through the tension like a knife. Instinct kicked in, and they took off, hearts pounding in sync as they dashed back toward the path from which they had come. The thudding sounds followed, a chorus of heavy footsteps resonating behind them, relentless and hungry. Shadows slipped and darted just out of sight, but the breath of something dark hung close. As they raced back, Sarah's mind spun with questions. Did they really provoke a nightmare lurking in the depths? What true horrors had they disturbed in this cursed forest? They stumbled into the safety of the research station, slamming the door behind them, but the weight in the air was unyielding. They had uncovered something more than they bargained for, and now they were being hunted. Do you hear that? Maya breathed, eyes wide, staring at the door as muffled sounds began to thump against the wood, a reminder that escape was only temporary. With a collective gasp, they understood. They had not just disturbed a creature or a spirit. They had awakened the very anger of the forest itself. What would they do next? How could they survive the wrath of something so primal, so deeply entwined in the wilderness around them? The thudding against the door intensified, waking a primal fear deep within them. Each strike was like a heartbeat echoing in the silence. Sarah pressed her back against the wooden frame, her breath quickening as she glanced around the room. We need a plan. Now, what if it breaks through? Jordan's voice quivered as he stared at the door, a thin film of sweat gathering on his brow. Let us barricade it, Derek suggested, his voice firm yet tinged with panic. They scrambled to gather anything they could find, chairs, tables, anything solid enough to withstand whatever was targeting them. As they pushed a heavy table against the door, Maya's eyes darted toward the window. What if it's surrounding us? She gasped, the terror washing over her like a cold wave. We can't think like that. Sarah snapped, trying to maintain her composure. Just focus. We need to figure out what we're dealing with. Suddenly, a bone-chilling howl sliced through the air, rich with a raw, bestial hunger that sent shivers down their spines. It echoed, as if the forest itself was alive with dread, taunting their fear. The shadows outside morphed and twisted, forming silhouettes against the fading light. No more waiting. Derek yelled, his patience frayed. If we stay here, we'll be trapped. We have to confront this. Are you insane? Jordan shot back, panic gleaming in his eyes. That thing, whatever it is, it's out there hunting us. I don't care, Derek replied, anger fueling his words. If we don't face it, we might as well be dead. Sarah studied the group, feeling the tension rise. She could see determination mixed with terror painting their faces. But inside, her instincts screamed against the idea. We don't know what this thing is. She protested. We don't even know what it wants. A loud crash resonated from the door as one of the chairs went tumbling over. The noise brought a wave of adrenaline, cutting through the fog of indecision. Derek gritted his teeth. We need to stick together no matter what. Everyone nodded, and they crept slowly to the back door, which led into the dense thicket of forest. The peeling light of dusk cast long shadows across the floor. Sarah felt a shiver of doubt, but there was no turning back now. Their only chance lay ahead, out in the unknown. On three, Derek whispered, gripping the doorknob tightly. 1, 2, 3. With a sharp inhale, they flung the door wide open and sprinted into the darkening woods, hearts racing. The air was thick, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. The eerie darkness felt alive, the whispers of the trees taunting them as they plunged deeper into the woods, the underbrush clawing at their legs. With each step, the oppressive atmosphere seemed to pulse around them, a heartbeat echoing in time with their fear. Vague forms flickered in the corners of their visions, and the howling became a cacophony that surrounded them, drowning out the sound of their pounding feet. Where do we go? Maya cried, her voice cracking under the weight of panic. We follow the path, Sarah called back, trying to regain some sense of direction. But even as they moved, it became clear there was no clear path, just the suffocating wild merging with their instincts, driving them deeper into the darkness, into the very heart of the monster's lair. Suddenly, glimmers of light caught Sarah's eye. A faint flicker, almost inviting. Look, she shouted, but as they drew closer, those beckoning lights twisted into something uncanny. Flickering shadows danced around a figure, half glimpsed through the trees, watching them with an intensity that froze their blood. Run! Jordan screamed again, but the figure stepped forward, revealing itself as a grotesque parody of humanity. Distorted, unholy. It grinned, and for a moment, the world blurred around them, the ancient echoes of the forest binding them tighter together. They stumbled backward, paralyzed by the horror before them. A thought pierced Sarah's mind. Could they face this new terror, or had they merely traded one nightmare for another? And as the figure lunged, they realized that running might not be enough to escape the forest's grip. What had they awakened in the darkness? Would they be able to face their own fears, or would the wilderness consume them whole? The air crackled with a haunting energy as the figure lunged, its nightmarish grin widening, revealing teeth that seemed more savage than human. Time stretched, a fragile thread about to snap, and the forest whispered secrets only it understood. Sarah's heart pounded against her ribcage, her breath hitching in her throat. "Move!" Derek yelled, breaking the spell. They turned on their heels, sprinting farther into the embrace of the trees, the figure's laughter echoing behind them, a taunting, sinister sound that made their skin crawl. Branches snagged at their clothes, Velcro on a bed of nightmares. But the sensation didn't slow them. Adrenaline surged. All thoughts of strategy vanished as they raced headlong, deeper into the unknown. Each snap of twigs beneath their feet felt like gunfire in the oppressive silence of the woods, threatening to bring the dark horrors lurking within closer. "Where are we going?" Maya gasped, desperation weaving through her words. "Just keep running," Sarah shouted, desperately scanning their surroundings for any sign of escape. Her instincts screamed that they needed to find shelter, somewhere to catch their breath, but the forest was a labyrinth, drawing them inward, twisting reality with every stride. Suddenly, a guttural howl rang out, a sound that seemed to vibrate the very trees, filling them with dread. It was close. Too close. "Over here." Jordan's voice came, sharp as glass, and he pointed toward a narrow gap in the trees. A cave mouth yawned ahead, half hidden behind thick vegetation. "Shelter." A flicker of hope ignited in Sarah's chest. "Inside," Derek urged, and without a second thought, they darted into the cave just as the shadows outside twisted and shifted. They squeezed together, bodies pressing, filling every inch of the cool, damp space, trying to silence their ragged breaths. Inside, darkness enveloped them, filling the void left by the frantic forest. The stench of damp earth mingled with the distant, acrid smell of decay. "What if it comes in?" Jordan whispered, his voice trembling. "No, it can't," Derek insisted, but even he didn't seem convinced. Outside, the sound of scraping, relentless clawing echoed through the entrance. It was stalking, circling like a wolf measuring its prey. "Do we go back out?" Maya whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. "What if it's waiting to pick us off one by one?" "It's our only chance to survive," Derek replied, desperation creeping into his voice. "We can't stay here forever." Silence fell heavily upon them, broken only by the breathing of their group, each inhale laced with fear. Just then, a voice echoed in the darkness, soft, melodic, yet eerily distorted. "Help me, please." The words curled around them like tendrils of smoke, pulling them toward the source, a shimmering light deep in the cave. It flickered, illuminating the rocky walls with an otherworldly glow, momentarily dispelling the shadows. "What is that?" Sarah asked, staring, entranced. "Do you hear it?" Maya murmured, her eyes wide. "It sounds like a child." "Stay back," Derek warned, instinctively stepping forward, sensing the danger that lay within the beauty of the light. "We don't know what that is." But something twisted inside Sarah. The plea echoed her own fears in this dark place. Together they were lost, but alone, in pieces, she sensed all their hidden terrors rising. The voice tugged at her heartstrings, drawing her closer to its glow. What if it really needs help? Suddenly, the light flickered, and the haunting howl from outside morphed into laughter, mocking, endless. As the group huddled together in the cave, torn between rivaling instincts, desire for connection, and sheer terror, a choice weighed heavy in the air. Would they reach for the light and risk everything? Or would they turn together and face the darkness that sought to consume them? The laughter grew louder. Beneath it, a new sound emerged, something soft, slithering against the ground outside the cave, something that stirred the very essence of their fear. What lay ahead could just as easily lead them to salvation or doom. And they were running out of time. Could they confront the wretched truth of the cave, or would the forest beyond reclaim them forever? The laughter twisted like smoke around them, mingling with the oppressive darkness of the cave, forcing Sarah to blink against the growing unease. What if it's just a trick? Derek's voice broke through the haze as he pulled Maya close, his eyes darting toward the jagged shadows. We can't trust it, can't we? Sarah challenged, her heart pounding. What if someone's really in there? The shimmer beckoned, promising solace. Yet, the laughter echoed a warning, each note dripping with malice. Listen, Jordan hissed, straining his ears. The scratching from outside persisted, but beneath it, the soft voice resurfaced. Help me, please. It was a thread of salvation, tainted with the unmistakable echo of despair. It sounds so real, Maya whispered, her quivering voice just above a breath. Hope radiated from her wide eyes, igniting a dangerous flicker in the gloom. What if it needs us? No. Derek's voice cut sharply. They could feel the weight of his anger pressing down. We don't know what's waiting for us out there. Then what do? Jordan snapped back, frustration flaring. The uncertainty clawed at them all, forcing every second to crawl by like hours. Just sit here and wait to be picked off. Before anyone could argue further, the cave trembled. The flickering light intensified, pulsating like the frantic heartbeat of something alive. The ground beneath them whispered warnings, rumbling softly but insistently. Go away, Derek shouted, turning his back to the beam of light. We need to be smart. We can't just run into a trap. But Sarah was already stepping closer, pulled by an unseen force. The glow painted her skin with a ghostly hue. Wait, she called back, though it sounded tiny against the swell of shadows. What if it's a person? No. Derek stomped forward, gripping her arm as he gently yanked her back. If that thing outside has a voice, it's manipulating us. We need to stay as a group. Suddenly, the shimmering light snapped into focus, revealing a figure, a small child, features pale, eyes wide with both innocence and fear. The child's mouth formed the words again, pleading desperately. Help me, please. Tension fractured the air in the cave, crushing their individual fears into a collective terror. The strength of the child's gaze felt real, yet they could hear the laughter slicing through the silence, a double-edged sword slicing their resolve. The outside noise grew louder now, wrapping around their retreating breaths. What if the child is the bait? Jordan blurted, a lump settling in his throat as he took a step back. We can't trust it. This is a game. Maybe Sarah hesitated, considering the fragile balance of this moment. But what if it's not? Enough. Derek's voice thundered, startling everyone. We need to decide. Are we going to abandon our humanity or risk it all for someone who might not even be real? Just then, a high-pitched wail erupted from the outside, shaking every nerve in their bodies. The scraping stopped, replaced by something heavy and primal rushing toward them as if the woods itself were coming alive, hungry. Get back, Derek shouted. It was a command layered with desperation. In that final moment, the light dimmed, revealing more than just a child's face. Shadows shifted, and something behind the child cracked, a creature, warped and grotesque, slinking into view, its mouth stretching into a nightmarish grin, revealing rows of teeth far too many for any living thing. Run! Derek roared, kicking off into the darkness. But the cave began to collapse in on itself. The choice was made, and the consequences followed swiftly as they fled deeper into the twisting passages. Sarah felt a cold grasp on her heart. Had they made the wrong choice? What lay in wait for them in the depths of the cave? Silence enveloped them again, interrupted only by their frantic breaths, and as Sarah fought to keep up, she couldn't shake the feeling that whatever awaited them could very well be worse than the shadows chasing them. A flicker of light emerged again, but this time it felt like an apparition, half promise, half curse. What would they find at the end of this dark tunnel, and who would emerge from it alive? The darkness ahead seemed to stretch indefinitely, swallowing their screams and fears. Sarah sprinted, her heart pounding like a war drum in her chest. She could hear the others behind her, Derek's angry shouts mixing with Jordan's desperate gasps. But all she could focus on was the flickering light that layered the tunnel walls, dancing like the last remnants of hope shimmering over shadows. Go left, Derek shouted, lunging into a narrow passage that branched off to their side. His instincts were sharp, but the decision felt hasty. fear bulleting through Sarah as they pushed into the claustrophobic space. The walls seemed to close in, encasing them in the darkness, blocking any chance of escaping what chased them. "Why did I trust you?" Jordan spat, jostling past Derek and then glancing back in panic. "You don't know where this goes. I'm trying to save us." Derek shot back as he stumbled, correcting his balance just before crashing into the cave wall. "Just keep moving." Maya stumbled beside Sarah, her breath shallow. "What if we're trapped? What if we make it worse?" "Shut up," Derek flared, his frustration spilling over. "We don't have time for what-ifs. We have to stick together." Their breaths echoed in the tight chamber, each inhale thickening with dread. The darkness began to feel alive, pressing against them, filled with whispers of all that haunted it. Behind them, the laughter returned, rich and oily, slithering into their minds, turning their thoughts into chaos. "Run," Jordan urged, regret already clawing at his voice. Just as the cave trembled violently, rumbles resonated from deep within, shaking their resolve as they plunged deeper into the unknown. Suddenly, they skidded to a halt. Ahead lay a small opening, barely 2 feet wide but inviting. The glimmering light flickered from within, pulsating in a steady rhythm, like a heartbeat echoing in the stillness. It was not disappearing completely, feeding the flicker of hope in Sarah's chest. "We can't," Derek began, but Sarah had already squeezed herself through the gap. As she crawled, the warmth of the glow wrapped around her, stark in contrast to the cold darkness behind. Emerging into the space, she gasped. The room was small but highlighted in golden brightness, showcasing swirling patterns on the stone walls that seemed to move and breathe. "Sarah," Maya's voice broke through her awe. "Don't just stand there." But it was too late. Derek and Jordan came tumbling in after her, landing in the sandy pile that covered the cave floor. They looked confused and lost, eyes darting around as the vibrant walls pulsed erratically, whispering secrets only the shadows could understand. "Look," Jordan pointed to the far end where something flitted, a shadow separated from the others, gliding towards them. It drew closer, revealing a young man covered in dirt, eyes wide with terror and silent screams written on his face. "What would happen to him?" Maya whispered, clinging to Sarah's arm as the warmth of the golden glow began to dim. Then they heard its soft cries from behind them, echoes of longing and terror spiraling through the air. More figures began to emerge from the darker recesses, filling the walls with clamoring cries for help. One by one, they stumbled forward, revealing faces twisted with despair like shattered reflections of reality. Derek stumbled back, heart racing. "What are these things? Are they begging us?" "No." Sarah's voice rose. "They're warning us," but a shiver trailed down her spine as the light flickered violently, swallowing the swirling patterns into darkness once more. The weight of many souls pressed against them, a damning reminder that whatever this cave held was more powerful than they could comprehend. "Run back," Derek urged, but Sarah felt paralyzed by the realization they were surrounded, trapped between the light and darkness, between hope and despair. As the faces grew closer, their cries intensified. Yet, from the chaos, one clear voice penetrated the haze, piercing through tightly knotted hearts. "Help us before it takes you too." The flicker of light dimmed one last time, and looming shadows draped over them, stretching hungrily, gleefully, their whispers edging closer. What choice would they make now? Would they risk everything to help the wretched souls trapped within, or would the darkness claim yet another sacrifice? The answer held by the shadows, lingering like an unanswered prayer as the cave threatened to close around them. The cries grew louder, harmonizing into a cacophony that clawed at Sarah's sanity. She felt the heat from the golden light flickering erratically, breathing with a life of its own. "We can't listen to them," Derek shouted over the disembodied voices, the panic in his tone ricocheting through the chamber. But Sarah's heart ached. Who were these tortured souls? What darkness had wrapped them in an eternal nightmare? As the silhouettes pressed closer, their faces contorted in anguish, she couldn't look away. Each plea was a reminder of the price they might have to pay. Tears prickled at her eyes, but she shook her head, trying to force clarity into her frantic mind. "Sarah," Maya's voice wobbled, fear bubbling just beneath the surface. "What do we do?" Suddenly, the flickering light brightened to blinding intensity, pushing the shadows back momentarily. Sarah shielded her eyes. But through the brightness, she noticed the young man, the one who'd drawn close to them, was staring straight at her, desperation etched on his face. His lips formed a wordless scream, his hands reaching out, begging for salvation from an unseen tormentor. "Stop!" Jordan shouted, dragging Derek back as he stepped to the front. "We need to go back before he could finish." A dark wave surged from the shadows, washing over them like a suffocating fog. With every passing moment, the whispers grew louder, more insistent, feeding on their doubts and fears. Derek's frantic movements were suddenly stilled as he clutched the edges of his head, his eyes wide. "Make it stop." In that moment, Sarah caught a glimpse of the shadows solidifying into a form, an entity thriving on their terror, its shape twisting into something grotesque and unholy. The light dimmed again, flickering in and out like a dying star, while the faces of the lost souls morphed into a mask of mocking horror. "This is no place for you," it roared, a voice deeper and more powerful than thunder, vibrating through the very marrow of their bones. Sarah felt her body tremble, sheer panic flooding her veins. She had to think. "If we don't help them," she began, her thoughts racing. "If we don't do something." "Shut up," Derek yelled again, his voice raw with desperation. "No," Sarah snapped back. "They're trapped. If we leave now, we won't be able to escape the consequences." "Haven't you heard?" The horrible voice resonated through the air, chilling them right to their core. "They do not wish to be saved. They wish only to feast on your light." Maya whimpered, her body shrinking closer to Sarah's, while the faces of the damned clawed at the air, longing, reaching desperately as a sense of inevitability took hold. "Choose." The entity barked, silencing their protests with its oppressive tone. "Help, or be helped. But either way, there is no escape." A heartbeat passed in agonizing silence. Shadows writhed around, entwining with despair, threatening to drown them in a tide of overwhelming despair. They stepped ever closer, mocking laughter clinging to the edges of their sanity. Sarah's heart raced, duality gripping her mind, the essence of self-preservation clashing against the haunting cries for help. In front of her lay a choice that crushed her spirit. "We can't be selfish. We're not like them," she shouted, hoping the sincerity of her voice might be enough to pierce through the veil of terror. But as if in defiance, a clawed hand lunged out from the shadows, swiping at Derek, nails like rusted knives inches from his face. He stumbled back, fear etching lines deep into his brow. In that moment, clarity struck her. Whatever haunted the cave was anchored in fear. They needed to confront it, expose it to the light of their courage. "Together," she cried, grasping the hands of her friends. And then, without knowing if it would be their salvation or doom, they stepped forward into the darkness, determined to confront the swirling entity that sought to claim them. But as the shadows swallowed them whole, they felt a tugging at their souls, a coldness that seeped down to their very core. And just before the final veil of darkness enveloped them, the young man's voice rang out clearly one last time. "Help us before it takes you." Now, standing at the edge of the abyss, would they find the strength to fight back, or would they be lost to the darkness forever? The darkness pressed in around them, thick and suffocating as the twisted shadows writhed at the edge of their consciousness. As they stood together, hands clenched tightly, the temperature dropped, and a deep sense of foreboding wove through the air. They weren't just fighting for their own survival anymore. They were battling the anguish of the souls trapped within the cave, echoes of lost hopes mingling with their own fears. "Sarah, are you sure about this?" Derek whispered, the tension in his voice heavy enough to slice the air. Sweat trickled down the back of his neck, and his grip on her hand tightened as if he would be pulled away at any moment. She took a deep breath, feeling the warmth emanating from their clasped hands. "If we don't face this together, we'll never escape," she replied, her voice steady despite the quaking laughter resonating around them, mocking their resolve. "We have to confront our fear, not hide from it." In that moment, the shadows stretched and twisted into grotesque shapes, transforming into manifestations of their deepest terrors. Sarah felt the weight of their overwhelming sorrow, and, behind that mire, a flicker of the light they carried within. The darkness hissed as if it understood their determination. "Together," Jordan shouted, pulling forward with renewed strength, the sound of his voice cutting through the malevolence like a knife. They all aligned, stepping forward, breathing life into their courage. The shadows recoiled for an instant, surprised by the collective force of their light. In that brief moment of clarity, Sarah could see the haunted faces, echoing her own dread but now touched with that sense of hope. No more fear, she cried out, and her words ignited the spark inside them. They began chanting, voices rising together like a chorus of defiance. "We are not afraid. We are not afraid." The oppressive laughter grew louder, but somewhere, beneath the chaos, a wail of pain intermingled, as though the darkest entity was being challenged. The glowing light seemed to pulse with their every heartbeat, filling the room with golden energy that pushed at the edges of shadow. "Feel the light," Sarah shouted, feeling the warmth consume her as she surged forward. "Feel it break the darkness." The swirling shadows began to shrink, recoiling from the brilliance of their courage. The anguished faces were now contorted with desperation, grasping at what little remained of their humanity in the grip of the darkness. "All of us," Derek shouted, and they linked hands tighter. "We can do this together." As the shadows clawed at the edges of their light, desperation sparked like dry tinder. They felt strength surge through them, a bond forged in fear but lit by bravery. They pressed forward, the shadows howled in fury, struggling against the brightness. And then, a voice emerged from the chaos, stronger, clearer than before. "Help us, please." With one final push, they collectively shouted, "You are not lost. You are not alone." As those words echoed through the cave, the glow of their unity erupted, piercing the thick veil of shadows. The air quaked, and a tumultuous roar erupted from the darkness. As if the very fabric of the cave resisted their light, as light burst forth, shadows scattered like fog on a warm morning. What had once been dark and oppressive transformed into clarity. The figures that had haunted the space shimmered, a kaleidoscope of broken hopes and deep sorrow that began to morph. Their features softened now as the bonds of darkness faded. "I can breathe," one soul gasped, arms reaching toward them. "Thank you," cried another. The cacophony quieted, morphing into soft whispers of gratitude, an anthem of liberation. The entities that had once lurked in the shadows had found peace, drifting into the light as the cave walls transformed, showcasing beautiful murals that celebrated their stories of hope, loss, and redemption. Sarah, Derek, Jordan, and Maya found themselves standing in a serene clearing bathed in bright sunlight, the heat brushing their faces as if the world had welcomed them back. The cave no longer felt like a prison. It had become a sanctuary of light, filled with a sense of profound peace, but the haunting laughter from before still lingered, a reminder of all they had faced. They turned to look at each other, and for the first time, they saw the strength of what they had become. Together, they had faced their fears. Together, they had navigated the darkness. "Let us go home," Derek said, his voice low with relief as he clasped Sarah's shoulder. "Yeah," Jordan nodded, looking around at their surrounding. "Let South leave this place behind. We've learned enough from its secrets." And with a renewed sense of purpose, they journeyed back through the woods. As they exited the thicket, the sunlight flooded over them, each step echoing with laughter, free from the burdens of despair. They would carry the memories with them, but now they were just whispers in the back of their minds, not chains binding them to the shadows. The woods, once threatening, now stood like guardians, a reminder of their journey and the battle they had won. And while the darkness might always loom, they knew that together, they would face whatever came next. But little did they know, the forest was never entirely empty. Waiting just beyond the reach of light, new stories yearned to emerge, and the wilderness would always whisper its secrets to those who dared to listen. Now, dear viewer, this is the moment to show your support. Don't let this journey end here. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories, absolutely essential for your thrill-seeking soul. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and keep this content alive. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. We want to hear from you. Did you think they would escape? And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only true fans understand how to keep this channel thriving. Let's keep this incredible community growing.